Japhet Danjuma. From the 38th floor of the Danjuma Group Tower, Japhet Danjuma stared out over the glass skyline of Victoria Island. Lagos pulsed below him, noisy, relentless, alive. But up here it was quiet, sterile, empty, just the way he liked it. At 34, Japhet was a self-made tycoon in the eyes of the world. They didn't know about the billions his father had quietly funneled into his first investment. They didn't know about the sacrifices his mother made to keep their name scandal-free. All they saw was the ruthless man who never smiled, never flinched, and never lost. He built companies like machines, efficient, profitable, impersonal. Love, relationships, those were liabilities. He dated women, models, actresses, heiresses, but none of them touched him. He had never felt anything. He went through the motions, dinner, gifts, cold goodbyes. His board members assumed he was just picky, but deep down, Japhet knew something inside him had shut off years ago. Ever since Emily, he had buried that name, that memory, that mistake. Or so he thought. Nitir Emily Obi. In a cramped two-bedroom flat in Agege, Emily Obi balanced a hot pot of ogbono soup on one hip and a wriggling toddler on the other. Her twins, Jaden and Joel, were wrestling on the threadbare couch while their sister Jasmine tried to fix her broken school shoe with a rubber band. "Dinner in 5 minutes," she called out, voice hoarse but gentle. This was her life now, survival. She scrubbed floors in other people's homes by day and braided hair at night just to feed her children. Every naira mattered. Every spoon of rice was rationed. But she never complained, not in front of them, not after what she had been through. At 19, she had been hired as a housemaid in the Danjuma mansion, a sprawling Banana Island estate with marble floors and staff that never looked her in the eye. That was where she met him. Japhet Danjuma. He was 23, fresh from abroad, arrogant and bored. But unlike the others, he noticed her. He talked to her. At first it was harmless. Then, one lonely night turned into a series of stolen moments. Whispered promises, breathless touches. And then, she got pregnant. When she told him, he stared at her like she had cursed him. His parents didn't even let her speak. "How dare you try to trap our son?" his mother had spat, flinging an envelope of cash at her feet. "You're nothing, girl. Go back to wherever you came from." Japhet said nothing. Not a word. Not even a sorry. She left that night with a broken heart, a swollen belly, and a vow to survive, even if it killed her. She never told her children who their father was. Not because she hated him, but because she wanted to protect them. From rejection, from shame, from the cold world she had once tried to rise into. But every time Jasmine asked why she didn't have a daddy like other kids, a part of Emily shattered all over again. She still remembered his eyes, stormy, unreadable, beautiful, and how they turned to stone the moment his mother walked into the room. Back in his penthouse suite, Japhet poured himself a glass of wine he wouldn't finish. He had everything, private jets, art collections, land in 3 countries. But still, he felt hollow. No one knew he had a weakness, a memory. A woman with brown skin and trembling hands. A secret he buried so deep he thought it would never crawl back into the light. But the past has a way of knocking, and it wouldn't be long before Emily did. Not to beg, not for revenge, but because their children had his eyes, and the truth has a face now. The wind whispered softly as Emily stood outside the gates of a modest yet clean apartment complex on the outskirts of Lekki. Her heart ached with the memory of what she had just done. She had sold it, the only plot of land her parents left her. It wasn't a large piece, barely a quarter plot tucked in the dusty edges of Ikorodu, but it was the last tangible memory she had of them. The land her father had sworn would one day be her foundation. The inheritance her mother had begged her to never let go. But dreams didn't pay school fees. Land didn't feed growing children. And sentiment couldn't shield them from the smell of gutter water or the rats in their Agege apartment. So she sold it. and moved her children into a modest two-bedroom apartment in Lekki Phase 2. The neighborhood wasn't Banana Island, but it was cleaner, quieter, safer. Her children, Jaden, Joel, and Jasmine, were 6 years old now, curious, bright, and beautiful. The boys had their father's eyes. Jasmine had Emily's smile. They deserved better, and Emily would give it to them, even if it broke her to do so. She was now in her final year of nursing school, a goal she once thought was out of reach when she left the Danjuma mansion with only a swollen belly and tears soaking her wrapper. But grace had carried her. Hard work had kept her, and the fire of motherhood had never stopped burning in her bones. It hadn't been easy. She attended classes during the day, then raced to her shift at the emergency unit of Heritage General Hospital, a top-tier private hospital in Lagos, where against all odds she had secured a job as an intern nurse. How? She was brilliant. She read during breaks, asked questions nobody else dared to, and learned faster than most of her classmates. One of the senior doctors, Dr. Ase Amadi, had seen something in her. "You remind me of myself," she had said once. "You burn, Emily, quietly, fiercely. That's rare." And so they gave her a chance. Her days were endless cycles of blood, textbooks, rushing children to school, late-night homework help, and tucking 3 sleepy heads into bed while suppressing her own tears of exhaustion. She never looked fully rested. Her eyes always held shadows. But her smile never faded in front of her kids. Every morning, Jasmine plaited her mother's hair before school. "So you don't look tired, Mummy," she'd say with her tiny fingers tugging carefully. Jaden always packed Emily's lunch from whatever they had left in the fridge. Joel would triple-check that her alarm was set before bed. They were 6 years old. But they loved her like they were 60. Bright, helpful, protective. They knew their mother was their hero. Even if she never said it, they could feel her love in every ironed school uniform, every late-night exam prep, every kiss she pressed on their foreheads before running off to her evening shift. Hospital corridor after a 12-hour shift, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a patient's glass door. She barely recognized the woman. Pale, thin, worn down, but her eyes still burned. There was something deeply beautiful about a woman who kept going when she had every reason to stop. Emily hadn't seen Japhet in nearly 7 years. She never once tried to reach him. She heard whispers about his success, Forbes covers, million-dollar mergers, luxury properties around the world. She knew he had become the man his family always wanted him to be. She wondered if he ever thought of her, but it didn't matter anymore. She didn't need him. She had built her own life with her bare hands. She had raised 3 of the smartest children in Lagos. She was almost a nurse, almost free, almost. What she didn't know was that fate was already winding its thread again, that Japhet Danjuma would soon walk into Heritage General Hospital for a business-related health checkup. And when he did, the truth he buried would rise again. Not as shame, but as a woman, one with his eyes and 3 small faces, and the fire of heaven. Japhet Danjuma had once believed power would make him untouchable. He thought if he worked hard enough, earned enough, and built an empire strong enough, no one could hurt him again, not even himself. But power had a price, and his was named Sandra. 6 years ago, when Emily walked out of his family home with nothing but tears in her eyes and truth in her belly, Japhet had been too much of a coward to stop her. His silence wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he knew what loving her would cost him. His parents made sure of that. "You have an empire to protect, Japhet," his father had barked. "You think a maid with a belly full of bastard children is the future of Danjuma Group? Handle it quietly," his mother had added coldly. "She's beneath you." So he did nothing. He stood there, dead in the eyes, while they dragged Emily's dignity across the marble floor. And to keep the peace, to protect his legacy, he accepted the solution they proposed. Sandra Eze. Sandra was the daughter of Senator Philip Ezzi, a man whose political backing meant everything to the Danjuma family. His support could secure Japhet's father the next Senate seat. And Sandra? She was the price. She wore her last name like a crown. The moment she stepped into Japhet's world, she made it clear that she was the gift, and he was the project. "I'm doing you a favor even being here," she said the night of their engagement dinner. "Don't forget that." Japhet tried to stomach her entitlement, her obsession with designer handbags, spontaneous getaways to Paris, Botox appointments in Cape Town, champagne breakfasts in Dubai. She burned through money like it was gasoline, and he let her, because complaining meant risking his family's political ambitions. He paid for it all: the bags, the cars, the penthouse she never even slept in. But what he couldn't pay for was peace. Sandra was loud, brash, and constantly high on either a cocktail of expensive substances or her own ego. She partied with strangers, flirted with business associates, and insulted Japhet to his face. "You're lucky I even tolerate you," she sneered once, tossing her Cartier watch across his penthouse in a rage. "At least I have real bloodline. You're just a robot your parents programmed." That night, Japhet slept in his office. He did that often, because it was easier to face balance sheets and contracts than the hollow silence of a luxury bed next to a woman who saw him as a pawn. What no one knew was that Japhet hadn't felt alive since Emily left. He thought ignoring the pain would make it fade, but it grew louder with time. Every time he saw a mother walking her child to school, every time he heard someone say, "Daddy," in the supermarket, every time his phone rang and it wasn't her, he wondered, where was she? Did she hate him? Did the child, no, the children, even know his name? He tried to distract himself with work, but the empire he once loved now felt like a golden prison. Everyone wanted a piece of him: investors, politicians, media, but no one cared if he was dying inside. He smiled in photos. He bled in private. He wore $1,000 suits, but he couldn't feel anything beneath them. Not even pride. One afternoon, after another humiliating argument with Sandra at a political fundraiser, Japhet sat in his Maybach, staring at his own reflection in the tinted glass. "I don't recognize this man," he whispered to no one. He was 34, richer than most world leaders, feared in every boardroom, but his soul was starving. That night, he stared at the ceiling of his penthouse for hours. His mind wandered again to Emily, the way she used to fold his shirts, the way she once kissed his knuckles after he bruised them on a gym bag, the way she looked at him like he was something more than his father's puppet. He didn't deserve to think of her. Not after what he did. But he couldn't stop. And he didn't know that fate was already moving. That in just a few days, a standard medical checkup at one of Lagos's top hospitals would lead him straight to her. And this time, she wouldn't be the one with shame in her eyes. He would, because she had become everything they said she couldn't be. And he had become everything she feared he already was. Japhet Danjuma had always known how to keep control. Control in boardrooms, control in public, control over the chaos that constantly threatened to rise within him. But tonight, that control shattered. He stood in the center of his living room, his phone still in his hand, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The photos glared back at him from the screen, explicit, shameful, undeniable. Sandra, naked, sending photos to Michael, his friend, his business partner, a man who had sat beside him at the last shareholders' dinner. She didn't even bother to hide it. When he confronted her, she barely blinked. "Japhet, stop acting like you're shocked," she said, brushing invisible lint from her designer top. "You knew what this was from the beginning." "You're sleeping with my friend?" he snapped, fury cracking through his voice. "I do what I want," she said coldly. "You don't own me." His heart pounded. "I took care of you. She laughed. "Took care of me? No, darling. I took care of you. Do you know how many women like me wouldn't be caught dead with a robot like you? You're rich, tall, handsome. You look great on my arm. You're a showpiece, a mannequin. That's it." He was stunned. Not because her words hurt, they always did, but because something inside him finally broke. He had heard variations of this for 6 years. You're lucky I even tolerate you. You're boring, Japhet. You need me to seem human. But this time was different. This time he didn't feel numb. He felt done. I'm a man, he whispered to himself after she slammed the bedroom door. I'm a grown man, educated, successful. Why am I living like this? No one had an answer. And he wasn't going to stay for another second. He grabbed his car keys, rage swirling like a storm in his gut. The marble floors echoed under his quick footsteps. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds rolling in fast as if the heavens themselves mirrored his rage. He sped through the underground parking and into the rain-soaked Lagos night. The streets were blurry, not from the downpour, but from the fog in his mind. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't care. His thoughts raced louder than the engine. Why did I stay for 6 years? Why did I let them control me? Why did I let her treat me like an object? Why didn't I fight for what I really wanted? Every question stabbed deeper than the last. He didn't see the pothole, didn't register the turn, didn't anticipate the truck that came out of nowhere. The crash was instant. The sound of metal twisting, glass exploding. Silence. 6 days later. The hum of machines, the sterile buzz of hospital lights, the crisp scent of antiseptic. Japhet Danjuma lay still, hooked to monitors, his face bruised, his body stitched and fractured. The accident had been brutal. He had broken a rib, dislocated his shoulder, and sustained a mild traumatic brain injury. He had been in a coma for 6 days. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. The hospital staff moved efficiently around him, checking vitals, recording stats, adjusting tubes. No one dared speak too loudly around the room of a man so powerful, even unconscious. Outside his private ICU room, questions swirled. The board wanted answers. His parents had flown back into the country. His assistant kept a tight lid on press inquiries. No one knew the full story. Only one thing was clear. He had woken up. Japhet's eyes blinked open slowly, squinting against the bright lights overhead. Everything was foggy, heavy. His throat felt dry and his chest ached with every shallow breath. He tried to move, but pain shot through his ribs. A nurse noticed and hurried to his side, pressing a button to alert the team. "You're awake, sir," she said softly, like she didn't quite believe it herself. Japhet tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Doctors rushed in. Monitors beeped rapidly. More questions followed. "Can you hear us? Do you know your name? Can you remember what happened?" He answered slowly, carefully. His memory was scattered, but the emotion remained. Rage, regret, exhaustion, and then confusion. Because just outside the door, in hushed whispers, the doctor spoke to his parents. They looked shaken, disturbed, and then he heard the words, soft, muffled, but haunting. "We need to tell him. He has to know." His mother's voice cracked. His father looked away. Japhet frowned, his heart thumping harder. What did they mean? What did he need to know? He tried to sit up, but the pain forced him back down. What could be worse than the life he was already living? He didn't know yet, but he was about to find out. Japhet sat propped up in his hospital bed, dressed in a plain gown, his face pale, his heart heavy. The walls around him felt like they were closing in. A soft breeze from the air conditioner whispered against his skin, but he didn't feel it. He was waiting, dreading. The senior doctor entered first. Dr. Felix, calm, experienced, and too quiet today. Behind him were Japhet's parents, his father stiff as a board, his mother biting her lips nervously. Something about the way they stood, like mourners, not family, sent a ripple of dread down Japhet's spine. "What is it?" he asked flatly, eyes darting from one face to the other. The doctor cleared his throat. "Mr. Danjuma, your accident resulted in trauma to your pelvic area. A nerve pathway connected to your reproductive system was severely damaged. Japhet frowned. And? The silence was brutal. Then the words fell like a hammer. You won't be able to father a child. Japhet blinked. It didn't register. It couldn't. He stared at the doctor like he had spoken in a different language. I don't understand. Your ability to reproduce has been permanently compromised. The room tilted. His pulse thundered in his ears. He let out a dry laugh. No, there's a mistake. I can pay for specialists abroad. Germany, Switzerland, the States. There's always something that can be done. Even with the best treatment, the doctor said gently, the chances are nearly non-existent. Japhet turned slowly to his parents. And then it happened. The rage erupted. You did this, he seethed, pointing a trembling hand at them. You destroyed me. Japhet, please, his mother whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. No, don't you dare cry, he roared. You don't get to mourn what you killed. His father's jaw tightened. It was an accident. No, Japhet cut him off, his voice breaking. The accident was just the end result. You ruined me long before that. You made me stay with a woman I hated. You turned me into a puppet. And for what? Senate seats? Political power? Public image? He shook with fury, fists clenched at his sides. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you, what I looked like on magazine covers, what I sounded like in press interviews. I was never your son. I was your investment. Japhet, his mother sobbed. I don't ever want to see either of you again. He looked directly at his father. And I'm never going back to Sandra. His chest heaved as silence fell. No one spoke. The machines beeped rhythmically beside him, but the emotional noise in his mind was deafening. This is my punishment, he thought, for what I did to her, for what I let happen to Emily. And for the first time in over a decade, Japhet Danjuma broke down and wept, not like a CEO, not like a politician's son, but like a broken man who had finally hit the wall he had been speeding toward for years. Later that evening, Emily was exhausted. She had braided Jasmine's hair for school, helped Joel and Jaden with math homework, and cooked dinner before rushing into the hospital for the night shift. Her bones ached, her head throbbed. Tonight, she was assigned to patient emotional welfare rounds, a routine task. Just check in, ask a few questions, record responses. She usually liked this part of her job. It made her feel human. But tonight, she wasn't in the mood. She glanced at the patient chart handed to her and sighed. There were 10 rooms to cover. She didn't check the names, just room numbers. She just wanted to get it done. The third room on the list was dimly lit. The patient had his back turned to the door, shoulders hunched toward the wall as if trying to disappear. Emily stepped in gently, her voice low. Good evening, sir. I'm here for a quick wellness check. No response. She tried again, stepping closer. I know it's hard. Pain has a way of muting everything. But you're alive. That's something. Still silence. She exhaled. You don't have to speak. I understand. Just nod if... Emily. Her name cut through the air like lightning. Her body froze. That voice. That voice was stitched into the fabric of her memory. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the patient slowly turned. Eyes swollen, face pale, bruised lips. But it was him, Japhet. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her breath hitched. His gaze met hers, shocked, raw, open. For the first time in years, no mask. Emily. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Then suddenly the dam broke. Tears welled up as she stumbled backward out of the room. And she ran. Down the hall, around the corner, into the staff bathroom, away from the one man who had both ruined and reshaped her life forever. She sank to the floor, heart shattering in her chest. Because fate wasn't done. Fate had just reopened a door she spent 6 years trying to forget. Emily didn't know where the strength to run came from. She only knew she had to get away, from the past, from Japhet's eyes, from the sound of her name on his lips. Her vision was blurred by tears as she turned the corner and crashed into someone. Strong perfume, expensive silk, gold bangles. Emily froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Standing before her, equally stunned, was the last person she ever wanted to see, Mrs. Danjuma, the woman who once spat at her feet, the woman who once screamed that she wasn't fit to carry a Danjuma child, the woman who handed her an envelope of money and told her to disappear. Now she stood there older, her makeup flawless, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You," the woman whispered, stepping back. "It's you." Emily's lips quivered. She remembered everything. The shame, the way she had been shoved out of the mansion like a thief, the cruel laughter from the staff, the look in Japhet's eyes that night, frozen, useless. Emily didn't speak. What could she say? That she survived? That she raised the children they tried to erase? Instead, she did the only thing her dignity allowed. She walked past the woman without a word, straight to the staff room, straight to her locker. She packed her bag with trembling hands. A nurse asked if she was okay. "I'm sick," she said quietly. And she was. Sick of this night. Sick of the ghost of Japhet. Sick of being strong. She clocked out and walked into the night like she was fleeing a burning building. Japhet stared out the window, his body aching, but his thoughts spinning louder than the pain. His emotions were raw, frayed at the edges, barely stitched together. The door creaked open. His mother stepped inside. For a moment, she just looked at him. Then, with a tight smile, she said, "I just saw her. Emily." Japhet turned sharply, his chest tightening. "I knew I recognized her face," she continued, stepping closer. "It took me a moment. She's changed. But it's her, the maid, the girl from all those years ago." He didn't speak. His hands clenched the blanket. "And I have a theory," she went on, voice cold and composed. "I think she had that baby. I think she kept it." Japhet's brows furrowed. "What?" His mother's eyes glimmered, not with love but calculation. "If she had the child, Japhet, then we can take her to court, file for paternity, establish legal guardianship. That way, even if you can't have children anymore," she paused, "you'll still have an heir." Silence. Long, dangerous. Then Japhet turned his full face to her, and what she saw wasn't the son she raised. It was a storm. "Are you hearing yourself?" he said, voice low, trembling. "You're suggesting we steal her child, if she even had one, after what we did to her?" "I'm trying to fix this," she snapped, her mask slipping. "Do you think I enjoy seeing you like this? We can still have something to hold on to." "No," he said louder now. "You can have something to hold on to. Power, legacy, control." His voice cracked. "But what about what she went through? What about what I lost? You kicked her out like she was nothing. She could have died. She could have—" "But she didn't," his mother interrupted coldly. "And clearly she's still here, still breathing, still working." "Don't be dramatic." Japhet's jaw trembled. "You're a devil." Her expression faltered. "Excuse me?" "You are an unrepentant, cold-hearted devil," he spat. "You've destroyed everything good in my life. You killed the one thing that made me human, and now you think you can fix it by stealing a child?" "I'm trying to help you," she insisted. "You've done enough," he bellowed, voice hoarse. "Get out." She blinked, stunned. "Japhet, get out." She took a slow step back. He looked away. "I never want to see you again," he said, barely audible. "I mean it." She stood frozen for a beat, then turned and walked out, heels clicking against the tile. The door clicked shut behind her. And Japhet broke. He bent over in the bed, face in his hands, and wept until his throat ached. Why didn't I protect her? Why didn't I stand up to them? Why did I let her go? He sobbed, and his body shaking. The coldness he once wore like armor was gone. All that was left was a man drowning in his own guilt. Will she ever forgive me? He didn't know. but he knew he would never forgive himself. Emily stumbled into her home just past midnight, her hospital scrubs wrinkled, her eyes still red from crying. The apartment was dark and silent. The kids were asleep. The only sound was the soft ticking of the wall clock in the living room. She dropped her bag on the floor, sank onto the couch, and finally let the tears come. She had tried to hold them in, through the ride home, through the front door, through the hallway, but now, alone, she broke. Seeing Japhet again had ripped open wounds she thought had healed. His face, his voice, the way he looked at her, like he had just seen the sun after years of darkness. And then running into his mother, the woman who once spat words like knives at her, had been the final blow. Her shoulders shook violently. Why now? Why was fate dragging her back into a story she had fought so hard to leave behind? Her sobs echoed into the quiet. And then, tiny footsteps. Jasmine stood in the hallway, half asleep, rubbing her eyes. "Mummy, are you okay?" Emily quickly wiped her face and forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. I just had a long day." The boys, Jaden and Joel, soon joined her too, confused and sleepy, crowding her on the couch. She hugged them all close. And in the silence of their small apartment, she asked herself the question that had been clawing at her since she fled that hospital. Can I still work there? Can I walk those halls knowing he's inside them, knowing what we were and what we lost? She didn't have an answer. But her arms around her children reminded her of one truth. Whatever she chose, she had already done the hardest thing. She had survived. 1 week later, Japhet Danjuma was healing, but not in the way the doctors hoped. His body? Yes, his ribs still hurt, but he could walk, talk, eat on his own again. But inside, he was a storm. The moment he saw Emily's face, something inside him broke, and something else awakened. The guilt he buried under years of coldness rose to the surface like lava. He couldn't rest until he found her. But when he requested her information from the hospital, they refused. Patient privacy, they said. He understood and respected it. So he hired a private investigator. Within 4 days, the man returned with a name, an address, and a photo that stole Japhet's breath. Emily Obi with 3 children, twins and a girl, 6 years old. His hands trembled as he stared at the image. The boys were him, his exact face, his exact eyes. It was like someone had cloned his childhood and placed it in denim overalls and Spider-Man sneakers. He didn't know what he was going to say. He only knew he had to see her. Not to take anything, not to lay claim, but to apologize and to beg for peace, for forgiveness, for closure, if nothing else. The visit. Japhet stood at the door of the small, tidy flat, heart pounding like a drum. His car was parked discreetly down the road, his security detail left behind. He raised his hand to knock. Before he could, the door creaked open. A little boy stood there, blinking up at him. Big eyes, wide nose, that same crooked smile. Japhet's knees nearly gave out. There was no need for questions, no need for DNA tests. This child was his. "Hello," Japhet said softly, kneeling instinctively. "Is your mummy home?" Before the boy could answer, another boy peeked out behind him. And then, a little girl clutching a crayon drawing. 3 of them, each one stamped with parts of his face. He stepped inside, breath shallow, emotions swirling like a hurricane inside him. He didn't hear the soft footsteps in the kitchen. He didn't see her emerge with a bowl of yam porridge in her hands. But she saw him, and she froze. The bowl nearly dropped. "Japhet?" she breathed. He turned, eyes already swimming. And then he fell to his knees. Right there, in the middle of her living room. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he lowered his head. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "Emily, I'm so sorry." She stood still, heart racing, her body tense. He couldn't speak clearly. His words were jumbled, raw, strangled sobs. His entire frame shook as he clutched his chest. I let them ruin everything. I let them ruin you. I should have protected you. I should have loved you out loud. But I was a coward. I thought I had time. I thought I'd forget. I never did. Not one day. He looked up at her. I missed out on the best part of me. I missed them. And I hate myself for it. Emily stood frozen, eyes locked on the man who once destroyed her and was now falling apart at her feet. The man who once watched her walk away and said nothing was now kneeling in front of her, begging for a second chance to breathe. And in that moment, she didn't know if her heart would ever be the same again. Emily sat in silence, her arms folded tightly across her chest as Japhet sat on the couch, his head lowered, his eyes still swollen from crying. The children had wandered off to their room after the strange man who looked just like them broke down at their mother's feet. They had questions, but Emily had asked them for a little space. Now she had her answer. I don't have strength for games, Japhet, she said softly, her voice still holding the steel that years of survival had carved into it. I have 3 kids, a job that drains me, and a life I built from the ruins you left me in. He lifted his eyes to hers. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was exhausted. But, she continued, if you want to know them, if you're really going to stay, not come and go as you please, then, yes, his breath caught. You can be in their lives, not mine. I'm not ready for that. I don't know if I ever will be. He nodded quickly, his voice barely a whisper. Thank you. I'll never take it for granted. I promise. And that's how it began. The first few weeks were awkward. Jaden, the more reserved twin, took a while to warm up to him. Joel asked him 100 questions a day. Jasmine wanted to know if he could braid hair. Japhet tried his best. He read parenting books, watched cartoons he didn't understand, took them to the park on weekends, bought them books, not toys, because that's what Emily did. At first he felt like an outsider, but slowly something changed. The kids began running to the door when they heard his knock. They called him Uncle Japhet. Then one day Joel asked, "Can I call you Daddy?" Japhet cried right there in the living room. He spent 4 months trying, really trying, to become a father. He was patient, present, and unlike the cold, aloof man the world knew, Emily watched him become warm. He no longer looked like a CEO. He looked like a man who finally understood what mattered. And slowly, Emily began to soften. She wasn't in love with him again, not yet, but she couldn't deny that he was changing. Then one Saturday morning, everything came crashing in again. Japhet had just taken the kids out for suya and ice cream when he returned to find his parents waiting outside the building gate. His father, sharp in his Agbada, guarded eyes. His mother, wearing fake concern like perfume. Japhet, she said as he approached, we heard you've been involved with her again. I've been involved with my children, he replied, voice flat. We came with a proposal, his father said, stepping forward. Let us take custody. The children can grow up in wealth, with proper structure, and in exchange, you go back to Sandra. Japhet laughed, cold and sharp. You're still dreaming. His mother stepped in. This could still work. We can manage the public angle, spin the narrative. All you have to do is act. Play your part. We can offer Emily a settlement. Take the kids. Stop talking. Japhet's voice cut through the air like a knife. His parents fell silent. He took a deep breath, then spoke, not like a boy seeking permission, but like a man giving a verdict. I'm done playing your game. This isn't about business or politics or image. This is about me, my life, my family. His father scoffed. We built everything you have. No, you bought it. You never built me. Emily did more for me with a single look than you did with your millions. His mother's face twisted. You would throw away everything? The Senate seat? The respect? Respect, he snapped. From people who don't even know me? I'd rather have my children's laughter than your headlines. He turned, then paused. For the record, he added, looking them both in the eyes, I'm going to marry Emily, with or without your approval. His mother gasped. His father's face darkened. You can either choose the Senate seat or choose to be in my life and that of your grandchildren. He didn't wait for a reply. He walked into the building and shut the gate behind him. For the first time in years, Japhet Danjuma felt free. Japhet had once been the kind of man who walked into rooms and expected everyone to adjust. But loving Emily, and more importantly, loving her right, taught him how to bend. And he bent. Daily. He brought flowers not to impress, but to thank. He offered help not out of guilt, but from a genuine desire to share the weight she had carried alone for too long. He never rushed her, never asked for more than she could give. Instead, he gave time, effort, safety. Sometimes he would just come by to do homework with the kids and wash dishes afterward, humming off-key in the kitchen. Emily watched, quietly. The man who once folded under pressure from his parents now stood like a mountain for her children. He didn't just visit. He showed up for school events, remembered Jasmine's favorite color, and even helped Joel build a volcano for Science Day. He asked nothing of Emily, but he made it clear, with every word, every action, that he still loved her. One rainy Thursday evening, as Japhet stood in her kitchen stirring a goosey stew, Emily finally let the words come. I don't know when it happened, she said, folding her arms, watching him, but I don't see you as the man who left me anymore. He froze for a moment, then looked at her. I see you as the man who's been fighting to come back ever since. Japhet's heart nearly gave out. She walked over, stood in front of him and added softly, So if you're still waiting for permission? His hand trembled as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. She gasped. He sank to one knee. No speeches, he said, eyes shining. Just this. Let me build with you what I was too blind to fight for the first time. Tears filled her eyes. Yes, she whispered. And for the first time, their children saw them hold each other, not as strangers bound by the past, but as partners walking into a new future. 2 weeks later, the news traveled fast, and like a storm desperate for relevance, Japhet's parents came to visit. But this time, they didn't come to command. They came with their heads bowed. His mother was the first to speak. I was wrong, she said, her voice cracking. I've been wrong for a very long time. Japhet stood with his fiancée beside him, his fingers laced with Emily's. We tried to shape your life to match our ambition, his father added. But in doing so, we destroyed the best parts of you, and we nearly lost our grandchildren without even knowing them. Then came the words Emily never thought she'd hear. We're sorry, Emily. Deeply, truly, for everything. Emily was silent for a long time, but eventually she nodded. I forgave you a long time ago, she said quietly, because carrying hate was heavier than raising 3 children alone. Japhet looked at her like she hung the stars. His mother wept openly. His father sighed and shook his head. You chose right, son. You chose love. And this time no one asked him to give it up. The sun rose gently over Lagos that morning, casting soft golden rays across the skyline. It was the kind of morning poets write about. Light breeze, skies as calm as silk, and a stillness that felt sacred. Inside a private garden in Ikoyi, white roses lined a short aisle. Gold-trimmed chairs were filled with close friends, quiet smiles, and the joyful laughter of 3 very excited children dressed in matching ivory. It was a wedding, but not just any wedding. It was their wedding. The wedding of Emily Obi and Japhet Danjuma. 2 people once torn apart by pride, power, and pain, now finally walking toward each other in full light, with nothing hidden, nothing held back. Japhet stood at the altar in a tailored white egbada, looking like peace personified. His heart beat slowly but surely in his chest. He had done the work, earned the forgiveness, chose love again and again. And now he was about to marry the woman who had never stopped living in the corners of his heart. The string quartet began to play. Everyone rose, and there she was, Emily walked down the aisle in a champagne-colored lace gown, radiant, graceful, and powerful. She didn't cry. She smiled, a quiet, knowing smile of a woman who had weathered storms and now walked in the sun. Jasmine threw petals ahead of her. Jaden and Joel walked behind her like proud little guards. When Emily reached the altar, Japhet couldn't speak. He just held her hands and let tears fall freely down his cheeks. They didn't need elaborate vows. The world had already heard enough words. So instead, they kept it simple. "I promise to never be a coward again," Japhet whispered. "I promise to never carry it all alone again," Emily replied. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the cheers from the children were the loudest. Later that evening, under twinkling lights, the reception bloomed with joy. Guests danced to soft high-life music. Plates were stacked with jollof, grilled fish, and small chops. Champagne flowed, but no one drank as deeply as Japhet drank in the sight of his wife laughing with their daughter. Emily stood in the middle of the dance floor with the kids, barefoot, glowing, alive. And Japhet knew, without a doubt, this was everything he ever wanted. No business deal, no election seat, no billion-dollar merger. Just this: home, family, redemption. Later that night, while the guests faded into the stars, and the children fell asleep side by side in the corner of the garden, Japhet took Emily's hand and kissed her knuckles, just like he used to. "I don't deserve this," he said softly. "You didn't," she replied, teasing. "But you grew into the man who does." And together, under the moonlight, they stepped into forever. Not because they were perfect, but because love, real love, always returns when it's chosen again. The Danjuma estate was no longer a palace of cold silences. It had become a sanctuary of laughter, morning pancakes, forgotten shoes on staircases, and children's drawings taped to kitchen walls. Emily sat in her home office, now Dr. Emily Danjuma, founder of Hope Spring Pediatrics, a modern children's clinic in Lekki. Her stethoscope hung by the window, and her name glowed proudly on the glass door outside. She had done it. Not because she had help, but because she had fought for it. Every exam passed, every night shift survived, every tear hidden behind a brave smile had led her here. Japhet entered the room quietly, a steaming mug of hibiscus tea in hand. He wore jeans and a plain t-shirt now more often than suits. The boardroom lion had become a lion at home, roaring only when his kids tried to sneak cookies before dinner. "You forgot your tea again, Dr. Danjuma," he said, smiling. She grinned. "I'm running a clinic. I forget a lot of things." He kissed her forehead. "Never this," he whispered. In the backyard, Jaden practiced guitar under the mango tree. Joel was sketching superhero characters on a whiteboard. And Jasmine? She ran inside shouting, "Mummy, Daddy, I got the part. I'm the lead dancer at school." Emily and Japhet exchanged proud smiles and rushed to hug her. Their children didn't just carry Japhet's face. They carried both their hearts. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Emily and Japhet sat on the balcony, sipping tea, their hands intertwined. "Do you ever think about how it started?" Japhet asked. Emily nodded. "All the time, and I still can't believe we made it." He looked at her, eyes filled with peace. "You saved me." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We saved each other." And in that moment, beneath the stars and the quiet hum of Lagos nightlife, they weren't CEO and housemaid anymore. They were partners, survivors, lovers, and parents of a legacy built not on money or power, but on love that refused to die. 6 months after the grand opening of Hope Spring Pediatrics, the clinic had become a refuge for mothers who once felt forgotten. Clean pastel walls, gentle music, warm nurses, and at its heart, Emily Danjuma. She didn't just heal children, she healed herself. Japhet had gifted her the clinic as a surprise, a sleek, ribbon-wrapped building unveiled on her birthday. "So you'd never forget how much you matter," he had whispered that day. But what neither of them expected was the miracle. It started with morning nausea. Emily thought it was exhaustion. maybe stress. But one hospital test later, she stood in the same exam room where she once gave injections, now trembling with the result in her hands. Pregnant, her mind spun. Japhet had been told the damage from the accident had rendered him infertile. It wasn't impossible, just extremely unlikely. But here they were, a baby, their baby. When Emily told him, Japhet dropped to his knees again, this time not in regret, but in gratitude. He laughed. He cried. And when he held the scanned picture close to his chest, he whispered, "You are our lucky charm." And that became her name, Charm Danjuma, a girl born into a home built on second chances, a child wrapped in light. Japhet took her everywhere strapped to his chest. The world still knew him as a billionaire CEO, but at home he was just Charm's daddy. And he never stopped thanking God that Emily gave him a second chance, not just at love, but at life. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.